love-hate. We get to the running backs. We start with Joe Mixon. He's got the Cowboys on deck. But besides how big this game is and how big this season has been for Joe Mixon, something even more important to him came up this week. Take a listen.
It's a hell of a blessing, man, for your teammates to, point you out to being the leader and to be able to lead by example and obviously be there for my teammates and uplift their game and to be in this position. I mean, it means everything to me. So the best thing that I can really do is just up the intensity with everything that I do. Obviously, when it's a captain, everything is magnified, and you got to hold that accountability towards yourself as well. So it's a blessing, and I'm very grateful, man.
Joe Mixon loving his time in Houston and loving being named a team captain from his teammates. Matthew, what you love is that he has Dallas, who's allowed the second most rushing touchdowns this season.
Yeah, and they've given up multiple rushing touchdowns in 3 of the last 4 games. So you got a shot here at maybe not just 1, but 2 scores for Joe Mixon. He's just getting massive volume, Connor. I remember a couple of weeks ago, like the line was 18.5. You took the over, and it cashed.
It was 20.
Right.
It's 20.
He's had 4 straight games, even against the Lions, even against the Lions' elite defense. He's still got north of 20 carries in that game. Like 4 straight games now with at least 24 touches for Joe Mixon. And every running back that's seen at least 17 touches, you figure he's getting 17 touches. Every running back that's gotten at least 17 touches against the Cowboys so far this season has scored at least 18 fantasy points. The addition, we expect Nico Collins to be back in this game, guys. So I think that opens things up because you can no longer load the box saying, you know what, we'll take our chances in single coverage with like Robert Woods and Xavier Hutchinson. Like, no, and John Mechie. It's a nice story and everything like that. But Tank Dell really the only guy that you got to really focus on. But now that Nico Collins is there, you're going to have to do some bracket coverage. You're going to have to play back a little bit more with Tank Dell and Nico Collins on the field. So I do think there'll be some more open running lanes for Joe Mixon. And this team is still going to want to run the ball, especially on Monday night, especially on the road at Dallas, where, let's face it, the Cowboys have been brutal this year.
They've been brutal. Texans.
But no sun on Monday night.
No sun on Monday night.
Listen, there you go. No need for curtains on Monday night.
We hope so. Yeah, we hope there's no sun on Monday night. So the Texans are 7-point favorites in that game, which is an indictment on where the Cowboys are at right now because the Texans aren't playing super well. To me, one of the most jarring stats in football right now, the past 4 weeks, Joe Mixon has received a minimum of 24 carries in every game, and the Texans are 1-3. Like that, speaking of indictments, that just has to be an indictment on Bobby Slowick. I'm sorry. You can't be running the ball this much. But for fantasy purposes, like we know what's going to happen. They're going to keep running the ball. Yeah. He averaged 1.8 yards per carry against the Lions, and they ran him 25 times. Like at some point, you got to try something else. It's insane.
Maybe, but honestly, like they should have won that. Well, I guess you can argue that game cost was on the offense, right? I mean, like they
got
just too many
5
field
picks
goals.
and they lost the game.
Correct. They got too many field goals. They just red zone. But how much of that is Slowick and the play calling, and how much of that is C.J. Stroud? C.J. Stroud has not played well.
No, he's
taking a step back. The line has been bad too.
Correct, but it's a trickle-down effect because he's been like he's seeing ghosts back there.
Right, it is a trickle effect, and I think what kind of made Slowick go back to that way was on Thursday Night Football against the Jets, a game they're somehow underdogs, and they did lose. They come out and they throw the ball on the first 6 plays of the game. And everyone's looking around like, oh my God, it's the Jets. Just run the ball. So it felt like Slowick went, okay, we'll do things the way everybody else wants it. It didn't work at all. They didn't throw the ball well at all against the Jets, and then they got running with Joe Mixon. So I think this is really who they are and want to be.
Yeah, I wonder if, I mean, this is not a fantasy discussion, but last year Bobby Slowick was a hot head coaching candidate, and I think a lot of
won't be this year.
I know, that's what I was going to say. Like Ben Johnson last year was like the hottest head coaching candidate, got a lot of buzz, and then some of the assistants. But Slowick got some love, and people were like, well, he's young, and he only had 1 year as a coordinator, and so maybe people thought he needed a little more seasoning. But I do know that he was mentioned for a couple of jobs. Like he was in the mix.
So much so that the Texans had to get out in front of it, and they released like a co-statement saying he was happy with the team. I'm sure he got a raise. And that he was going to not take head coaching interviews and keep improving as an offensive coordinator. Like very early in the process. But if that didn't happen, he was getting interviews.
Yeah, for sure.
So how quickly things could change.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think so much this year.
I never really understood how much of Slowick last year was just he had C.J. Stroud as his quarterback. Because the main thing I remember from Bobby Slowick last year is Week 18 against the Colts, where C.J. Stroud was thrown for 25 yards every single time he dropped back, and then they just kept on running the ball.
But listen, as we're sitting here killing the guy, I mean, but he gets credit for that. No one thought C.J. Stroud, especially with that Texans offense at the beginning of last year, that they were going to be any good at all. C.J. Stroud was a revelation, and you got to get credit. Like if you're sitting here killing for the offense this year, he's got to get credit for developing C.J. Stroud on some level last year. I mean, again, like there was a reason at the end of going into last year, there was a reason why the Panthers were picking 1 and the Texans were picking 2. And the Texans made some trades, and they also improved their defense. But still, no one, and they added D'Amico Ryans as head coach. Like it was a whole over. But no one sat there and said, you know who's going to be competing for the AFC South title this year? It's the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
I mean, C.J. Stroud played out of his mind last year, and
it's
you
just
have to give Slowick some credit for that.
Yeah, I would assume so, that something of that is to do with Slowick. It's also so difficult to assign credit to how a quarterback develops. Like everyone last year was like, oh, Dave Canales has fixed Baker Mayfield. Like Baker Mayfield looks even better this year under Liam Cohen. Is that because Canales gave him the building blocks in the first place? Like it's difficult to say, but certainly for this year, Stroud seems to have taken a step back, and for fantasy purposes, that means that Joe Mixon is just an absolute monster because he's going to continue to get work, and Joe Mixon is one of the best running backs in the NFL.
And how much of that is because Nico Collins been out of the lineup, and then they lose Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell's been in and out, and it's been different guys out there, plus the injuries to the offensive line. Versus, by the way, they're more balanced this year, which is what we said in the preseason.
They scored 7 points against the Vikings when they had everyone back in week 2 or 3. Like it wasn't perfect even before Nico went down.
This is correct.
The peaks and valleys have been tough. That's been the issue.
Either way, all this is to say, we love Joe Mixon this week.
RB5.
He's gonna get the ball over 20 times in a great matchup against the Cowboys as touchdown favorites against Dallas.
We also love the duo in Detroit, Sonic and Knuckles, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery.
I'm not in on that nickname.
Why not?
I don't know. You're on an island with this one.
Yeah,
everyone else likes
great.
Sonic and Knuckles.
Yes.
I think you're just Bobby Slowick running the ball on this one.
No,
everyone's yelling.
it's a video game. It's a video game.
It's a show.
Is the
It
show
originated from a video game, but now it's a show.
There's a show.
Kids really like this. I
a
don't
show
even have
called
kids. My nephew loves it. Every time I'm over, he's watching this.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are now 13, so like they don't watch shows; they watch TikTok and like this. This is how my kids watch TV.
Well, it's
on their phone, right?
Brain poison.
Yeah, 1,000%. All right. So Sonic and Knuckles. Not crazy about the nickname. I'm still going to own that. But I am crazy about the matchup. I am crazy about both these guys this week as well. The matchup is against Jacksonville. Right, and so Jacksonville allows the third most fantasy points per game to running backs this season. Running backs that see at least 15 touches against the Jags, actually averaging 19.8 fantasy points per game. You see it there in your screen in terms of the most fantasy points allowed to running backs. They're third in the NFL. And both Gibbs and Montgomery are averaging 15 or more touches per game. So again, like we think both these guys are going to get 15 touches against Jacksonville in a game in which obviously they are heavily favored almost by 2 touchdowns in this one. So you expect both guys to get at least 15 touches. And again, if you get 15 touches against the Jaguars, you're averaging about 20 fantasy points per game. Both guys are top 14 plays for me this week.
Yeah, I would guess as well after the Lions really struggled to run the ball and establish the run against the Texans that if anything there would be an overcorrection to get back to what their identity is.
Josh Jacobs next up on our love list. The Sonic and Knuckles, by the way. RB10 for Jahmyr Gibbs, RB15 for David Montgomery. I'm just going to keep hammering this nickname.
You're by all means, you can. And this is the kind of thing I'm going to bring up on Worse Lands.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Did you hear this,
No,
Jay?
don't
Lawrence and I's
show.
plan? No.
He was off, and by off, like very far away.
Right. So you know how Connor does 8 zillion different shows,
Yeah.
right? He fits us in between all of his other obligations. And so one
Pro
of the
football stock or whatever you called it yesterday.
It's hard to keep track. You need a
net
scorecard,
spot.
honestly, to figure out everything that he does. But one of the ones he does is called Badlands, and it's about the Jets.
Sure.
And so Lawrence and I are going to start a podcast called Worse Lands,
Right.
which is about the Giants.
Yes.
But secretly, Worse Lands isn't really about the Giants, but it's mostly about just MFing Badlands.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
The entire
rivalry.
show is just like we say, like another bad game for Daniel Jones. Did you hear what Connor Rogers said? And then we just MF Connor for like 20 minutes.
Sure.
And we just try to start a fight with Badlands. We're Worse Lands.
Yeah.
What do you
Seems like
think?
an incredible podcast idea. I don't see any way that would fail at all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You've done
Lawrence,
it again, Barry.
Lawrence was super into it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can tell.
Well, Lawrence and I have been fielding calls left and right from
Yes.
title sponsors. We're sifting
Yes.
through all the offers.
Yeah.
People want to be associated
Seems like it'd be
with
a
Worse Lands.
great 3.5 minutes of episode 1.
Right.
And then,
Literally.
might struggle.
Never again.
Yeah.
Goes on SoundCloud, not even like a real server.
You can bitch about.
SoundCloud.
Listen, there's a lot of stuff you can bitch
That's
about.
a
You can bitch about the
SoundCloud
Giants.
podcast.
You can bitch about the Giants versus the Jets. You can bitch about Connor. Like honestly,
Sure.
that's enough for a show. That's enough for
45 minutes into that.
And by the way, if you don't get on board, we might bitch about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Connor's got a friend, Jay Croucher, and then we start,
We'll welcome you on
MFing
Badlands.
Yeah. But you can do one about bet the circle or something as opposed to the edge. Bet the smooth surface.
Polygon.
I don't know. That sounds interesting to
Yeah.
me. It's whatever. But Badlands, I want to take down. I want to take down with worse lands.
Good luck. We've survived a lot of bad Jet seasons.
Yeah.
We're battle tested.
New York sports
That I
not great
believe.
at the moment. It's not going well for New York sports.
It hasn't. in a long
Ever
time.
since the
Liberty.
Ever since the fifth inning for the Yankees against the Dodgers, it's all been
Wait till the
downhill.
Mets get one.
The Mets are the only vibey team. The
Yeah.
Rangers, kind of.
Yeah,
They
it's
kind of
not great right now.
teetering.
Knicks might be all right.
No,
they're not that good.
Lost to the Bulls last night.
Yeah, they're not that
They
good.
did. They can turn around.
Everyone in
Carl
the East is
Anthony.
bad,
I think
except
the
for
most
Boston
important thing
and
about the
Cleveland.
Knicks is that Carl Anthony Towns is doing awesome for Live at Noon, Live at 3 on the Cock, my NBA assholes team. Live at 3 on the Cock, yeah.
That's good. Yeah,
I'm just-
and it's good that you know he plays for the Knicks.
Yes!
That's a big.
Come on.
big win.
jump.
You're impressed that I knew that, right?
It's all trending up for Barry.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
Josh
I'm crushing
Jacobs.
Steven in our league this week. I'm
He
just
gets
telling you.
crushed often.
Yes.
Our last running back in the top 15 here is Josh Jacobs. He's RB14 for Matthew here, Jay. Listen to this. Things have been bad for the Bears, but I think a lot of people wouldn't realize over the last 4 weeks, they're allowing 175 rush yards per game. It's been all Caleb Williams' focus, but this run defense has been brutal on top of that.
Whole team just seems broken at the moment. They're 5.5-point dogs at home to the Packers. This was a team that looked like it was going to be really in the playoff mix after that win over the Jags in London. And then not only did the Hail Mary cost them a win, it also cost them their whole season, because after that it's just been an absolute mess. And so you expected the Packers are going to be leading. Josh Jacobs running the ball against the suspect run defense. There's no reason why Jacobs shouldn't have a massive game.
Yeah, I agree with it. You talk about Chicago in this matchup. Like normally you'd say, like, oh, that's a tough matchup. Yes, the offense struggles, but the Bears' defense has been pretty good this year. But the truth of the matter is not recently, and definitely not against the run. Over the last 4 weeks, they're giving up 175 rushing yards per game. That is second most in the NFL. Teams that face the Bears during that stretch are averaging over 28 running back carries per game, and part of that obviously is because of the failures of the offense, and so you have short drives and other teams are getting the ball and just winning time of possession. But running backs that get at least 17 touches against the Bears this season, they're averaging 100 yards from scrimmage, and so Josh Jacobs off of the bye at home the game's in Chicago, but off of the bye in a division game against the Bears, yes, Aaron Rodgers owns the Bears, but I think Jacobs might rent them this week.
Yes, no, I agree.
Others receiving votes, Kenneth Walker. You could have just let it lay.
Yeah.
Others receiving votes, Kenneth Walker.
I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out in case you missed it.
Nick Chubb, Jalen Warren.
My wordplay.
Audric Estime makes the others receiving votes, sneaking in the top 30 there, Matthew. It's Estime time.
Yeah, we talked about
underestimate
Estime. We've talked about him a lot over the couple of weeks. I know one of your podcasts talks about him a ton. But 82% of the Broncos running back rushes last week. Highest rate by a Denver running back in a game this season. It's a nice matchup at home against Atlanta. Najee Harris, your boy Najee, Jay, has been banged up this week. I don't know if he's going to be able to go against Baltimore, but either way, the way you attack Baltimore with your running back is through the air. Over the last month, the Ravens giving up the second most receiving yards per game to running backs. Obviously, Warren is the receiving down back for the Steelers. And then we talked about Nick Chubb the other day as well on the Wednesday show here. Saints have given up multiple rushing touchdowns in 4 of the last 5 games. Chubb's getting a lot of work here. We expect the offense to be better under Jameis Winston in a revenge game scenario. And the last one, Kenneth Walker, just the passing game usage against the Niners.
While Jalen Warren makes the love list, his teammate, as you said, Matthew, Najee Harris, things not looking good, Jay. He's on the hate list. He's banged up, and only one running back has rushed for 50-plus yards against Baltimore this season.
Yep, they're the biggest pass funnel in the NFL, the Ravens. So there's that aspect where no one is able to run on Baltimore. I think the other aspect, too, is that this could be the week where there is the reckoning for the Steelers, and this finally runs out. Russell Wilson, his production overall has been so dependent on the deep ball, and that is unsustainable, I think. And so I think the Baltimore should be playing with a lead in this one. They're inching towards 3.5-point favorites on DraftKings, so tough run defense, likely game script not in their favor, so tough to start Najee Harris.
Yeah, and you see some of the list of names of guys that have not even gotten to 60 rushing yards against the Ravens. Chase Brown twice, Pacheco, Nick Chubb, Javonte Williams. None of them even got to 60 yards. Nick Chubb's the only one that broke 50 against them as well. And so you add all that to the fact that Najee Harris isn't particularly healthy at the moment, and there's only been 5 times this entire year that a running back scored even 11 fantasy points against the Ravens. And in 4 of those instances, the running back got at least 50% of their fantasy points in that game from receiving. And so Harris just isn't used in the passing game the way that Warren is. So that's why Warren is on the love list. He's my running back 24 this week. Harris is on the hate list. He's my running back 26. But of course, love, hate, all about expectations. I've raised them for Warren this week, lowered them for your boy Najee.
Good news for Brian Robinson on Thursday Night Football. He is off the injury report after having some limited practices to start the week. The bad news for Brian Robinson here, Matthew, is that over the past 4 weeks, the Eagles are allowing the second fewest rush yards per game to running backs. He walks off the injury report into a really bad matchup.
Really bad. We don't know how healthy he is. He's going to gut it out. He's one of the toughest players in the NFL. But, what you're hoping for with Brian Robinson, because the matchup isn't great, well, maybe at least he falls into the end zone. And there's always a chance that he does that. Here's the concern even on that. Like, the Eagles have allowed only 2 running touchdowns to running backs in 9 games this year. 2 in 9. So even the odds of him falling in the end zone aren't as good as they would be in a normal game. Week 3, the last time a running back scored more than 12.5 fantasy points against the Birds. So love Brian Robinson, as you guys know, one of my favorite players in the NFL, but sadly makes the hate list. He's outside my top 20 for the week.
How real do you think the Eagles' defense is? Because the numbers are amazing. They haven't played a great deal, though they did kind of shut down Cincinnati, which was impressive.
I think it's no coincidence since Cooper DeJean has gotten off the injury report and been inserted to this defense, what kind of juice it's given them. Great tackler, good in coverage, and he's just helped the load of talent they already have. So I think they're for real right now and trending upward rather than everybody else that's getting injured and trending downward. Also, Bryce Huff finally got going last week. That's a big sign for them.
There is, but I mean, Jacksonville almost beat them. And if Trevor Lawrence doesn't throw a duck to a freaking linebacker right into the end zone, right? I mean, so I don't know. I mean, again, maybe this is me why I'm wearing my burgundy and gold glasses. I'm full on Homer McHomerson over here, but I don't know. I think Jay's point is correct, which is the Eagles have been awesome over the last 5 weeks. They haven't, with the exception of Cincinnati, they haven't beaten anybody real.
No.
They're beating up on the on the Giants and the Browns.
It's inflated.
I will say though, it is always a very good indicator when you take out the trash and do it emphatically. To be beating these teams, even you beat the Giants by 25 points, that's impressive. They beat Cincy by 20. They completely destroyed Dallas as well in a game that I think there was the expectation that might be close, and it wasn't. So, the Jacksonville game was a bit of a mess, as was the Cleveland game, but overall, I think things very much trending up for the Birds.
Yes.
Bird up.
Yeah, exactly.
The original bird up.
Yeah, the original bird up. Fly, eagle, fly.
Original recipe.
Yeah.
Our final running back here on the hate list, Tony Pollard.
The other thing that's annoying is that I have a ton of friends that are diehard Eagles fans, and they're all annoying. I mean, right. Yeah, obviously,
They're a polarizing fan base.
They are a polarizing
I would call them
fan boys. No, I mean, like really good friends, and so all my phone's been blowing up, and just if they lose tonight, if my Commanders lose tonight, which
you're going to hear it.
Oh, am I going to hear it?
That's all right. Well, you get to play them again in a few weeks.
Yeah.
At your house.
At our house, yes. Yeah. At our house.
Yes.
Where the plumbing actually works.
Raining from the sky.
They fixed it. No ownership.
Yeah.
They put a couple of bucks into the stadium.
Yeah. One of the great home field advantages in Washington, because not only do you get the benefits of the refs and the crowd and everything, but you also get a stadium that tries to kill Jalen Hurts.
Yes. People forget about that.
There is
that's hard to bake into the line.
Very scary.
Stadium
yeah, we'll see. Maybe there was also remember the time when the showers didn't work?
Yeah. There's been a lot of issues over the years.
Yeah.
I think poop raining from the sky is number 1.
Yeah, that was number 1.
Yeah, like with a bullet.
100%.
Okay. All right.
Dan Snyder.
Our last running back on the hate list is Tony Pollard. He played only 3 more snaps than a now healthy Tajay Spears last week. Matthew, is his work, you think, continue to go down against the Vikings?
That's the concern, right? One of the big arguments for Tony Pollard, even on an offense that's been inconsistent this year, is that he's just getting massive workload. But last week, he played just 53% of the snaps. As you mentioned, only 3 more snaps than Tajay Spears. He had 13 touches in that game. And in all the games in which he's had less than 19 touches this year, he's had under 11 fantasy points. When he doesn't get the volume, he doesn't have the production. There have been only 3 running backs to score 12 or more points against Minnesota this season, and all of them had at least 19 touches. Again, Vikings very good defense. The way you score against them, massive workload. We don't expect it for Tony Pollard this week because of the presence of Tajay Spears. He's outside my top 20 this week, even with 4 teams on a bye. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.